A few people have asked me how I make my pleats on my mask so quickly. The answer is I cheat. Whenever possible, I always cheat, and I make something or a tool to help me, or I find a faster way to do it. So I started out making them by hand, sort of eyeballing it, and then I decided I would make a pleater to help me with making the pleats more quickly and more evenly. So the first thing I did was I took a mask where I liked the pleats already, and I measured it. And you can't really see from the side. It's much easier to measure when you don't have the ties on already. This is the style I'm making, but you can make a pleater for any style using the same type of thing. So the first thing I did was I measured to the bottom of the first pleat. You'd have to start at the top. It's really important. Pleats should be going down. So when you're measuring, measure from the top. So the first thing you do is you measure your first depth, and then you measure how big the pleat is. You kind of need to measure all the way to the pleat. I stick the ruler all the way in, and that's how. And you want to measure how deep your pleat is. So that'd be that measurement right there. And then the next thing you measure is how far down is the bottom of the next pleat. So you go here, and then you measure the depth of the pleat, and so on. And then you measure to the third pleat, and then you measure the depth of that pleat. So the depth of your pleats should be the same. If it's not, then make it the same, whatever measurement you like, because once you have a template, they're always going to be even and the same. So I took those measurements and I cut out from a piece of cardboard. I happened to use a glove box, ironically. You can use like a cereal box, anything like that. It's a little bit sturdier, but it's thin enough that you're not, increasing the size of your pleats or anything. And then this can be put under the iron. So you cut out 3 small pieces for your pleats and a bigger piece for your base. If you want to make it narrower than your masks that you're making, you can then keep it on the template when you go to baste your pleats, if that's more comfortable for you. I did that in the beginning, but now I'm making them assembly line style, so I'm after I press it, I'm taking it off the pleater, and I'm just lightly pressing it. There's a hair there, before I take it to the machine, so then I could do a bunch all at once. So after you've cut out your pieces, you're going to need some masking tape, and you're going to need your ruler again. So the first thing you do is you take that first measurement from the top down, and you measure to the first pleat, and then you measure to the second one, and then you measure to the third one, and you draw a line across. And then you take your pleat piece, the smaller piece, and you line it up with the bottom of that line, and then you take your masking tape and just tape it across. And my pleats are narrower, so I then wrapped it around the top, and that works really well, so I recommend doing that. And then you take your second one and you line it up with the second line and tape it and wrap it around the top, and you take your third one and you line it up with the third line and wrap it around the top, and then you end up with this really flexible kind of pleater. When you're ready to pleat your mask, you take your mask that you have stitched and it's ready to pleat. And if it's a directional fabric, here's a directional one. If it's a directional fabric, you want to make sure that the top is where it says top. So you're going to do front down, and the top is going to be where it says top. So it's really important to write top on there. If it's not a directional fabric, then it doesn't matter. Since this is a rainbow, we're going to go with the red at the top. Well, the red, orange, yellow instead of the red, purple. So we're going to put face down, line it up with the top, and then we're going to clip it. So, I just used 2 little clips at the top. You want to make sure that it is lined up exactly at the top, because you took all those measurements. So then the next thing you're going to do is make sure all your little pleats are face down, because that makes it a little bit easier as you go. The next thing you're going to do is fold it up right at the top of that first line, and you can kind of finger press it, or if you want to use a pressing tool, you can press it. I don't really use this as much at this stage. I use it a lot now to make sure everything's fully in place. So you finger press it and you flip up your pleat, and then you fold down. And after you do this about 50 or 100 times, it goes really fast. I started out clipping or pinning right here as well, but I don't need to do that anymore. Again, after you make 50 or 100 of them, you don't really need to do that anymore. So I just finger press it across again, and then you're gonna want to clip your ends. And if it feels a little loose, mine always seems to feel loose on the second side, you can make sure it's put in there really well. And then clip that side, clips over here. Then you do your second one, same thing, you fold it up, line it up, kind of finger press it, fold up your pleats, and then fold it down, finger press it again. You're going to want to clip your ends, and then make sure it's in there nice and good, and then you clip your ends again, and if it's a little loose you can adjust, and then you you fold up your last part, and then fold up your pleat. The third one always seems to get a little loosey-goosey for me, so I always make sure it's nice and tight before I clip it. Get that third clip in there. There we go. And tighten up across. Just make sure it's nice and tight on the ends. And then clip that one. You end up with 3 nice even pleats. You can't really see, but you don't want your pleats overlapping each other. My sewing machine doesn't really like that, but in general you don't want your pleats overlapping. So where the bottom of one pleat is should be the top of the next one, and they shouldn't overlap at all. So then now you've got this nice pleated piece, and we're gonna need to baste it. So because I'm doing them assembly line, the next thing I do is, and I only have one pleater, the next thing I do is I take it over to my sewing machine. Or not sewing machine, I'm sorry, ironing board. Ignore the messy part. So I lightly press it with my iron. I'm not really gonna be able to do it one-handed. I take off the top 2 clips, and then I lightly press it just to kind of keep it in place. And then I slide it off, which is easier with 2 hands, but here we are. Slide it off the pleater. I'm gonna press it a little more this time. And then I will usually also lightly press this side, the front, just because it keeps it a little bit nicer when you go over to the sewing machine. So I'm going to go over to the sewing machine. Normally I'd do a bunch of these up, and then I would, sorry, I gotta drag my chair. And then I would baste them. But we're gonna come over here, and I don't know if I'm gonna be able to baste one-handed. So we're gonna give it a go. So I've got one already on here to show you because I wasn't sure I'd be able to baste one-handed. So what I usually do is I put my hand down, and then I take off the 3 clips because if you don't, then the pleats will come out. So we're gonna very carefully take out, see how it undoes. But when you've got your hand right here, they stay. And then the next thing I do is I will put it up underneath the needle. And let's drop that down. I'm trying to do it one-handed. So I've got this set on a basting stitch on my machine I'm doing 5, which is the longest stitch. And I'm using the center position because it's a little bit easier for me to see. I'm actually a little too far over because we're just basting. We want to be inside where the tie is going to go. We're back. I accidentally turned off the video, so here we are. So now that we've got it lined up, we're just gonna, and I'm using my little tool to kind of hold the pleats in place. We're going to switch hands a little bit. There we go. We're gonna just baste it. Let's see if I can do this one-handed. It is much harder one-handed than I thought it would be, to be honest. And And we're just gonna baste that in place with the longest stitch. And then once you've done that, what you end up with is this right here, which is just a, my light's over there because I used it for filming that part. You end up with these nice bastes, and then you can attach your ties. I'm using bias binding, but you can straight cut it. You can do straight binding, it's fine. And that's the style that I'm making. And that's how I do my pleats. And it goes really fast after you've made a few of them. Hope that helps.